So apart from Victoria and South Australia starting in a little while, of course, the whole of Greater Sydney is locked down, but then there's the extra stringent lockdown within the lockdown of those 3 large council areas in Western Sydney. What a nightmare this is for police. Let's catch up with the Emergency Services Minister in New South Wales, David Elliot. Thanks for joining us, David. How are police coping with enforcing different sets of rules, really, across different areas of Sydney?
Well, this is where I boast that the New South Wales Police Force is a very robust organisation, and yes, they have had to comply with a great number of changes with these public health orders, and they've done that. We've seen the changes in southwestern Sydney, particularly relating to stay-at-home orders, the tougher stay-at-home orders, but we've also had to deploy police to Bondi after what was a very disturbing few scenes on the weekend, and I'm delighted to say at the moment the people of the Eastern Beaches have been complying since then.
I'm a bit concerned about this targeting of the Eastern Beaches or Bondi or any area really, because people are just getting out in some sunshine and having a walk. This is good for their physical health, their mental health, and we know, of course, transmission doesn't occur outdoors. People aren't going out there sort of snogging each other. Do you think we should be more lenient with that sort of thing?
Well, the concern, of course, is when there is a mass gathering, and that's what we've seen in some of these areas. It's not the concern of people that are doing the right thing, keeping their distance and going for a walk for the period of time that they want to during the day. But a lot of them start to push the envelope, Chris, and if one of them pushes the envelope, like we saw at Bondi the other day with a woman was just bouncing a volleyball between her feet every now and then and arguing that she was exercising. Well, that's not exercising. And if we allow one person to push the envelope, well, then a whole lot of people will push the envelope. And that's been some of the concerns around, certainly around southwestern Sydney, when people are still coming in and out of each other's houses.
Yeah, look, the trouble is, I mean, the police must be in an invidious position to use judgment here, because I understand all that, the orders, and other people get resentful, but there's a lot of nasty stuff where people are being critical of one particular suburb versus another, and you've got so many people in these areas who are living in small apartments, and if they want to go out and just sit on a park bench for a while, why can't we tolerate that? Why do we have to say they need to be doing, jiu-jitsu or something?
Because that's the problem. If particularly in a highly densely populated area, if one person wants to sit on the park bench, well, then you're going to have a couple of hundred people wanting to sit on the park bench, and that's the unfortunate situation we're in. I mean, the police don't like it. Let me assure you that the police like a nice, quiet community which goes about its business. They don't like having to deal with what individuals like to do when they feel that they can, confront police on points of law. Well, the public health orders say that you've got to stay at home unless you're doing a number of things, including going to work or exercising, and we need people to obey the spirit of the law.
Well, in the National Cabinet the other week, all the premiers and the Prime Minister agreed that lockdowns would now be a last resort. That obviously means different things to a lot of different people. This is not a last resort lockdown, is it?
Yeah, well, listen, as I said, nobody wants the pubs open more than me. I can assure you of that. I've got a son that turned 18 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't been able to buy him his first beer, so I'm looking forward to that. But once we've got the vaccination rate up, Chris, well, then that's when we talk about this last resort.
Well, can I just jump in there? Because this is the key. Up where? We know most of the deaths, 80% of deaths from COVID in this country have occurred in aged care homes, all vaccinated. Everyone's been given the opportunity of a vaccine, and over 90% have taken it. We know that 3/4 of people aged over 70 have had at least their first jab, so we're well underway there to protecting the vulnerable. How much further do we need to go before we can wind back some of these heavy-handed, blunt instrument reactions?
Well, that's a matter for the Health Minister and the Chief Medical Officer, but I dispute the demographic, because yesterday the most recent death in New South Wales, of course, was a 50-year-old woman in southwestern Sydney. So we've got to be very conscious of the fact that we now have 20-year-old people in ICU in Sydney on ventilators. and that's what we're trying to avoid. But I'm actually quite the optimist in all of this, Chris. I'm hopeful that we'll come out of lockdown in Sydney on the 30th of July. I'm not going to put the kids' shoe money on it, but what I am hopeful that we get to the figures of 70-80% vaccination like we're hoping to over the course of the spring. And come Christmas, this will all be just a terrible, terrible memory. That's what I'm working towards. That's what the New South Wales Police are working towards. We want to make sure that when it's time to get back to our normal lives, then they're done as swiftly and as conveniently as possible.
Let's hope so. Thanks so much for joining us, David.
Thanks, Chris.